The business of boosting Boise.
One of the trends that's coming up is solo travel. People are taking more trips by themselves. So how can they see, and we have such a safe, clean city, a great environment here, that this is an ideal market for that.
From solo travelers to sports and more, we talked to Carrie Westergard of Visit Boise about tourism in Idaho's capital city. Next. This episode of the BoiseDev podcast is sponsored by Lombard Conrad Architects. If you're a frequent BoiseDev reader, you've probably seen their credit on renderings on many cool projects. This Idaho-based firm is focused on designing public architecture through a spirit of collaboration. They've been in business for more than 50 years, and you'd recognize their work, from the Velma V. Morrison Center for the Performing Arts to the Ada County Courthouse and Meridian City Hall, and that stunning new Center for Visual Arts along Capitol Boulevard at Boise State. That's their work too. Lombard Conrad Architects values partnership and community above all else. They say it's what drives them to fulfill a simple yet significant mission: to enrich and inspire the human spirit through architecture in public spaces. You can learn more at lombardconrad.com. Thanks to Lombard Conrad Architects for their support of BoiseDev.
This is the BoiseDev podcast. Here's your host, Don Day.
Carrie Westergard, Executive Director of Visit Boise. Welcome to the BoiseDev podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So we like to kind of talk about people's paths to their current gig. You've had your current gig a long time. When did you start in this role?
It will be 9 years in early January. I know, it just flew by.
Crazy. And what led you to this job, and what made you want to do this for a big part of your life's work?
Well, I am one of those few people that actually went to school for tourism and hospitality, which I'm so excited that there's a program now here at Boise State. But most people are like, you did? Because everyone lands in this career in a different way. They have different paths. And so mine was a traditional path where I actually went to school for it, but I thought I was going to be in the airlines. I was like going to school thinking, I'm going to work for the airlines, and I have not worked for an airline a day in my life. So did not go that way. Ended up in resorts, hotels, property management. And then through that work, you find out about chambers of commerces and visitor bureaus and the work that we do now. And I really love this work and couldn't see doing anything else.
So you kind of get a hospitality degree, you got your mind set on the jet set world. Where was your first job?
My first job, my parents moved to Lake Placid, New York.
Okay.
I was in college when they moved there. So during the summers, I would work for this resort in Lake Placid. And so after I graduated, I really didn't know where I was going to go. I did think the airline, so I didn't think I'd end up in Lake Placid for a long period of time. But the resort that I worked at had a sales position. Mm-hmm. So they were like, do you want to come and do sales? And I was like, sure. And just really learned on the job. Loved that work. I mean, a lot of it was a golf resort. There were weddings, reunions. It kind of just gave me a vast, array of different things in the sales world. And then they closed down. So
crazy.
My very first job, I got my severance little pink slip. I'm like, well, it's not a reflection on my sales ability. But I was 22, right? So I said, well, I've always wanted to go to Colorado. And my parents were like, what? Where?
So you're an East Coast person.
East Coast.
And you're like, heading to the mountains.
I want to just pack what I can put in, my skis, my bike, and I want to go to Colorado. I had some friends that were sprinkled around between Denver and then in the mountains, Steamboat and Boulder. And I ended up in Denver working for a hotel, again in sales. And I kept visiting a friend over in Steamboat. And they heard about this place called Ketchum, Idaho, and Sun Valley, Idaho. And of course, I knew Sun Valley Serenade, and but the East Coast at that point in time, we really did not know a lot about the West, right? And the Western ski resorts, unless you had been there. And so I again quit my job and packed my car up and headed to Idaho. And so I've been here almost 30 years.
Crazy.
I know. So it's been a long, great career. I ended up in property management over there in Ketchum. And then I don't know, some of you may know Wendy Jaquit. She recruited me over to the Chamber of Commerce and kind of grew within that organization, ended up being their marketing director for about 13 years.
And then you landed at what was the Boise Convention and Visitors Bureau and is now Visit Boise. And
Yeah, I actually came over to, I wasn't sure what job I was going to get to begin with. I knew I wanted to come to Boise. I ended up at the Chamber of Commerce to begin with, overseeing their leadership programs and their young professional group. And it was the best infusion into this city and community. I mean, I found my people, I found like-minded people that were really cared about the community. And through that work, I got to know the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And when this position came up, I decided to go for it.
So CVB is, I think, a little unique here in that it's kind of under the umbrella of the chamber. It has some links to the Boise Center. And explain how that kind of works for people, how that structure works.
Absolutely. So when I came on 9 years ago, it was a separate 501c6 organization, and we were provided space at the Chamber of Commerce. So we had a great relationship with the Chamber of Commerce already, and I was coming from the chamber side, so it was a lot easier to have that trust, and just made a lot of sense in a lot of ways without a lot of duplication of services, right? And IT and copiers, and I mean, it just similar to like a place, like a business place like that you're in here. So we merged about a year and a half after I was there. And what I like to say is they're like the parent organization and more the tourism division, similar to the Boise Valley Economic Partnership. They're the economic development. We are separately funded. So we are about 95% funded through a hotel tax. And so all that is kept, separate. I will say that we have a great partnership. You mentioned the Greater Boise Auditorium District. We are their marketing partner. So we have an annual contract with them to provide marketing and promotion and sales for the convention center, to bring in conventions and meetings to the convention center. And I know that it's confusing to people because they also have a sales team that we work hand in hand with. Our sales team represents the entire area, Garden City and Boise, all the hotels that have meeting space like a Riverside, a Grove Hotel. And then we also work in conjunction with them to bring in large multi-hotel conventions that will fill the convention center. And so that's where the differentiator is.
So the auditorium district obviously is a kind of this funny boundaried, kind of funny shape. Most of Boise Parts Meridian organization, they operate Boise Center, but they exist to drive hotel room sales and get people in hotel rooms to drive more tax. But they aren't necessarily there to promote, a convention that's at the Riverside, for instance.
Right.
So you kind of help work together kind of hand in hand to present one united force if you're out on a trade mission, or like, hey, come to Boise and have a meeting at Boise Center and put people at the Riverside, or a convention at Riverside. I mean, is that kind of how that works?
Exactly. And then the other part, of what we do is the leisure side and the cultural, the sports, and so, the sports have been pretty big, and it really was significant during the pandemic where meetings and conventions pretty much shut down, during that time, where we could really lean in and work on the leisure side and some sports that were distancing, they had limited participation. Like when we had the Big Sky Conference that year, I think there were 200 people in a 5,000 seat arena. Spread out with masks.
Well, the first one got stopped by COVID. Yeah,
it did mid-conference. So, it's a real vast array. The Idaho Tourism Program has a grant program as well, and that's part of our funding. And so that is representative of all the marketing and sales that we, and the leisure, social media, our website, everything that falls under marketing goes through that grant.
So a bunch of things to dig in there, but since you just brought up sports, let's talk about that. we are seeing a little bit of an increase in sports here. The Steelheads obviously going strong for a long time. Boise State football going strong for a long time. But some new things. What's exciting there? I believe you have a person who's dedicated to that piece of the puzzle. What's that look like?
We do. We have a sports sales manager who also helped create a sports council this year, which has been really exciting because it's really bringing together those venues and sports organizers, such as the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, the Big Sky Conference, anyone that's holding us with the Twilight Criterium, getting them together, quarterly to talk about things, needs, to talk about a lot of it's volunteer needs, right? All these events need huge numbers of volunteers, sponsorships, sponsorship opportunities, all of that. I would say that's just going to grow. And our sports, having a dedicated sports, I've always thought it was important. Since I started in 2015, we've had someone dedicated to the sports cycle. I will say Lucas does a phenomenal job. He's brought in some national new events like the national climbing event, or the USA BMX. So that was out in Caldwell. Because that's where the venue, worked best for them, but they stayed all over in a lot of Boise Meridian hotels. So a lot of what we do, even Far West Soccer, the rooms go from Mountain Home to Ontario, Oregon. I mean, teams are staying everywhere.
And that's every 2 years?
Well, that's not really.
Or is it irregular? Okay.
It's supposed to be, bid cycle. Every year there's a bid. We were fortunate to host it multi years just because they love Boise and they love the fields out at Simplot.
Should explain what that is, I guess, the youth soccer tournament that's the region, right?
Right. So it's a regional soccer event that encompasses 11 different Western states, including Hawaii and Alaska. So a lot of these, soccer, teams that are coming in for the entire week, even if they lose. They have their tickets, they're staying, so they love that they can go, on a trail, mountain biking, or they can go off river rafting with their family. There's just a lot to do here. They are going to Hawaii next June. I've heard, there could be a back in 2025 kind of thing.
Cool.
So, yeah.
How do are there things on the horizon? I know that the NCAA has come here for part of the March Madness tournament for years and decades. Seems like there's some question about the future viability with some of the political environment in Idaho and in other states. Do you see the NCAA's returning here? That's always really exciting. Is that something you think will happen?
I certainly hope so. I know Lucas went to the NCAA. They had a conference a few months ago. That Boise State, they've got a great team over there, and they're really, I would say, since I've been here, I feel very inclusive of wanting to work with the community to try to get some of these events. Some of them may not be basketball. I mean, we hope we get the basketball for sure, but cross country could definitely happen here with the NCAA. So, I am hopeful. I definitely would love to see it here, and I know we've got a team that's, they don't like, they're push until we can get some yeses. So,
what's the value of things like the Bass Soccer Friendly, which obviously it's been a number of years now? Those kind of one-off, high-profile events. Does that have particular value when you bring in people who might not have any other reason to come here? Do you see repeat business from that? How does that kind of work together?
Well, I mean, that was a phenomenal event, and I would hope, I love the tie-in with Hialdi and the cultural aspect of that event, but let's say it wasn't that particular event, it was another high-profile. It's introducing Boise and Idaho to, the people maybe have never been here before. We had some great high-profile conferences this summer. One that BVEP was really involved with, IAMC, and there were people from all over the country, right? And they'd never been here, and they had no reason to come here except for this conference gave them the reason, right? Because they didn't have family, they weren't so sure, why would I, I've got all these other places I want to tick off first, right? And now they're like, I'm going to come and I'm going to stay longer. I'm going to bring my family. This city is way more than I thought. You don't know what people's perceptions are before they get here, but I think they think it's much smaller than it is, with a lot less amenities.
So it's a very marketing-driven type of a organization. When you're looking for how to market the Boise value, how do you look at it? I've been getting ads for Visit Seattle over the Christmas holiday, and it's like, well, we got a hockey game, we got the Nutcracker, and we got this. I'm like, well, I've got all that in Boise. I mean, other than you're putting Santa in an aquarium, which I don't think happens in Boise. Like, why would I go to Seattle for those things when I can stay here? How do you sell that differentiation so that when somebody's looking to spend money, they're going to come to Boise instead of Portland or Seattle or Bend or even Sun Valley or Jackson Hole? How do you make this the case that this is the place to spend those tourism dollars?
Well, we like to talk about how accessible everything is here. You can have some of the same things, like, you might have hiking in Seattle, but it might take you an hour to 2 hours to get there. And when you get there, you're going to be with a lot of other people, right, hiking that same trail. So you have the urban amenities, and then you have the outdoors. And I think there are outdoor cities. I've been self-proclaiming this city Outdoor City USA. I really feel like it could be outdoor city on a patio, or outdoor city, up on the ski mountain within 40 minutes from downtown. I think a lot of what we have, the over 200 miles of trails here, other places may have them, but not this close and this accessible, where you could stay in a hotel downtown, not have a car, and get to the outdoors very quickly. So I think, people like that feeling of, yes, I still have my urban amenities, but, kind of like a base camp type thing, but I can go and do these. I can go and do a river trip. I can go, and explore the wine country, but then I get back and I have a great dinner at night. And, one of the things I know we want to start, really, really pushing is some of the downtown. I mean, there's such unique shopping here. And especially, I just want to give a shout out just before the holidays. And, we work closely with the Downtown Boise Association, and they do a phenomenal job in getting people downtown. But, that just to try to get out there and support the local shops. I think they really would love to see everyone in their doors this winter.
How does that interface work? The Boise CDB is just the city limits, or is it broader?
We pretty much follow currently the Greater Boise Auditorium limits. So
it's Boise, a little bit of Meridian, kind of that.
And Garden City.
Funny, yeah. So when you're looking at that and you're marketing this and you're saying, okay, we want people to come here, is it a holistic thing, or do you try and focus on specific individual things? How does that kind of play together?
We are pretty specific on there's different. It's more psychographics, right? It's more about, so it's not age necessarily as it is the type of person and what they like to do and enjoy doing. So some of it is family oriented, some's couples or friends trips, or there, what's a big trend that's happening more and more. We just had an agency day, I like to call it. Agency day, where we brought in, we had our PR firm, and we work with two different agencies in town, marketing agencies, one in town and one in Texas. And one of the trends that's coming up is solo travel. People are taking more trips by themselves. So how can they see, and we have such a safe, clean city, a great environment here, that this is an ideal market for that.
We're seeing a lot of more hotels. In fact, as you walked in, I've been writing up to two more hotels proposed out by the airport. And there's certainly a broad array. There's a whole bunch kind of in the hopper downtown. One of the things I've historically heard from the auditorium district is we really could use a convention hotel, but the demand keeps getting soaked up in smaller hotels. Do you think that that's something that holds the area back, that there's not this JW Marriott or some sort of similar type property that has its own convention facilities all in one house? Or do you think that the system of kind of pulling together several hotels is still working?
Okay, I'll answer that
Complicated
2 ways.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll answer
yeah.
it 2 ways. Our biggest reason for lost business is not enough hotel rooms or not enough space in the convention center. We have also been on that. We need one large hotel, right? We've wanted that one large hotel. We compete with Spokane, that's one of our biggest markets.
They kind of have that, yeah.
They do have that, and they have more convention space, and they have, I will say, it's always like who builds first, right? Like if you build the hotel, we're already full. Like the convention center, we're booking into 2026.
Oh, anybody who wants to try and get even just a meeting date at Boise
Right.
Center, it's like good luck, and it's
Right.
very expensive because there's demand, right?
Exactly. So it's do you build the convention center more, somewhere else, or build it up, whatever. Is there more space needed there, or is there more hotel space? And then to answer it a second way, the way, because we are in marketing and sales, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to change our narrative when we're talking to groups, because before, yes, it's an obstacle. When we book a group of 500 people, typically they could be in 10 hotels, because that's the group blocks that we're getting, because the leisure's been, and the other markets have been so strong, the hotels aren't giving these large group blocks, right? And so we just had a group in town, Freeman, who's the largest event industry organization in the world. They brought in their VIPs this summer, and they did a campus kind of takeover. So they did things at the Egyptian Theater, at the Convention Center, at Jump. They bought out some restaurants for dining. They did a scavenger hunt all over the city. And it's really a great model when you think about it. It's getting people to really get to know the community. And I think a lot of what we're hearing from a younger market, like, some of the millennials, they aren't so keen in staying in one room the whole time they're at a conference. They want to get to know the city they're in. They want to explore. And so the way that Freeman used it is their hotels were more like whatever division, like if it's like whatever sales, they're in this hotel. So they had team meetings like for breakfast and that sort of thing. So, just trying while we have what we have, because we have wonderful product here, and this is how we're kind of changing our narrative and our sales, just because we definitely still want to get people to come and have their meetings here and not be turned off by, I have to have more than 2 hotels,
We're seeing a bunch of new product come on the market. The Hotel Renegade should open here in 2024. I think spring is their target. You got the project across the street that Oppenheimer Company is redoing the old Safari Inn. Hotel 43 is undergoing a fairly good size revamp. And then you have the large dual branded concept there on Grove Street. And that's like one block, right? And you're seeing a couple, like almost 1,000 hotel rooms, I think, either revamped or built close to the convention center, adding that capacity. Does that help that issue and go to kind of your campus idea by building that little cluster, do you think?
It will, for sure, because I believe with that dual concept as well as the Hotel Renegade, there's some meeting space in there. I mean, it's 3,000 square feet, but you can have those breakouts, more of that, sort of like we do at the Grove Hotel. They have some great meeting space as well. So, we have a pretty high occupancy year round. We run a little bit over 70%. I know the larger hotel or the larger cities, they would really love a occupancy such as Boise has. So, summers, it's sometimes hard to get a room. So I definitely think that there's need for additional product. And really, we meet with a lot of the companies that are coming through assessing, for the needs of hotels. And, we'll always mention the large convention hotel.
Yeah.
But I think what it comes down to is what the ownership and the funding sources are comfortable in, having, what pencils out for them. And, when there is hopefully we're never going to go through another pandemic, right? But that hurt the large hotels were empty and closed down for a long time in like a Seattle or some of those markets.
So in your 9 years, you've kind of been through an interesting sweep here in the Boise area. Obviously, COVID, a big piece. But taking that aside, you look at the trend line, and other than that kind of blip, it really has trended out strongly. Do you see that growth continuing? Do you see it accelerating? I know it's hard to predict. You look at what the Boise Airport thinks, and they show a pretty strong uptick. Do you think there's anything that helps or hinders that?
No, I do see us growing, and I think that just with how much people care about these communities, right? The whole valley. It's going to be smart growth. I definitely feel like they'll build what the need is as it's needed, but it will be done in a great, thoughtful way.
If you could just pick an amenity that you're like, gosh, if we just had this, it'd be great. I've been to the new aquatic center that I know a lot of people wanted for a long time, where my little one's getting some early swimming lessons. And that's kind of a new, neat thing to add. But if you could just say, gosh, I'm going to wave my magic wand and this is going to happen, what would that be? What does Boise really need to compete for that growth?
Well, and I don't know if it necessarily needs to be right in Boise. It could be in Meridian or on the edge of Boise Meridian or Garden City. We've been saying this for years, that a multi-youth, young adult sports facility. There's pieces of it. Whenever basketball is really big, volleyball is really big here, softball, baseball, and there's fields spread out. There's basketball courts. Usually when we have a basketball event, it's spread out at local high schools, but having that, there's definitely a smaller facility, that I'm sure if haven't been there, it's like 6 courts, I believe. Home court has 6 to 8 courts, which is great. It's phenomenal, and it serves a great purpose. We need more than that to be able to put on.
So kind of back to that sports piece again, being a big driver.
Well, and what's great about the sports piece is, some of the products being built here in downtown Boise, but there's a lot of product that's being built, out by Topgolf, out by the airport, and sports fills everything, right? So people, like I'm a sports mom, and you don't necessarily stay right by the place that your child's competing at. You stay where the team has their block, and it might be 20 minutes away. It might be 30 minutes away. So the good part about sports, it adds a balance, to the system of where the hotel demand is.
What do you think Boise's brand is to somebody outside the area that maybe hasn't traveled here before? What do you think that they first think? And then what's your role in tuning that towards something that's going to drive them to come here? Is it just blue turf? Is that what everybody thinks, or is there more to it?
Well, they definitely know the blue turf. They know potatoes for Idaho. They know outdoors. I think they see the outdoors, but I think the perception, I don't know if it's good or bad. There's been a no perception in some regard, depending on where. Western U.S., pretty much they know Boise, right? Or they think they know what Boise or Idaho has. Eastern.
In Iowa, right?
Yeah. Eastern's still we're nearby, we're in Iowa. They do have that. So there's still that growing, and we've been, we're still limited, on our marketing funding. We have to be really strategic and not wasteful and have ROI on the funds that we receive. So a lot of it is very pointed to the markets that have air service, either nonstop air service or that you can drive. Because that's who would be likely to come. So it doesn't surprise me that Eastern U.S. may not know as much about Boise, Idaho, because we don't have a lot of nonstop. We have the Atlanta flight, and that's been phenomenal. I think it's been 95% occupied.
Crazy.
It's been, and that's opened up the East Coast. But as air service develops, I could see that marketing developing as well.
What role do you play in that? Obviously, Rebecca Hupp and the airport folks are focused on that. The chamber historically has been focused on that. The city of Boise has been focused on that. Even tertiary cities that don't have the airport are focused on that. there's a wish list kind of a mile long that they'd like to see from DC to Hawaii, obviously getting the short-lived New York metro area flight back. How do you interface with that? And I'm sure you would like a flight to every destination in the country. How do you help guide that and focus in on this is where we think there's dollars to be had? Obviously, there's multifacets there, right? Business travel and some of that. But for the actual tourism piece, how do you help that?
Right. I mean, that is a good point because our part is more on, the meetings, the conventions, the tourism, the sports aspect. So we do have some data that we definitely share. We work very closely with the airport on, we even do some marketing programs together on specific markets. I would say one of the things that we can come in at when they are potentially either have a new flight announced, a new market announced, they usually have their dollars dedicated to letting people in Boise and the Treasure Valley, the entire Idaho, right,
Sure.
know that there's this flight. Our thought is let's get people from that market into Boise, right? So that's where we can counterbalance, where we're like, well, we'll dedicate funds in Atlanta, or we'll dedicate funds wherever that new flight is, so we can get people to come from that market to here.
I tell you what, anytime a flight changes in this town, we jump on that story because everybody reads it.
Yeah.
It's wild. I mean, people just are always excited to see where we can go, or on the other side, when we lose a flight, which does happen from time to time. If you could pick one destination, I know I keep giving you this pick one thing, but
Yeah.
if you could pick one destination or a few destinations, where do you think there's the biggest bang for the buck to have a flight to?
Well, if they were
Incoming.
Yeah, if they're willing to do an East Coast, like a DC flight, Washington DC, New York, or Boston, one of those three. So that wasn't just one, but I would say DC was my first one I said. So I would love a DC flight. We do have a lot of business in DC. There's a ton of associations there. It doesn't mean that all the members of their association live in that area, but I think a DC flight would do well.
That's a place you get political alignment in Idaho. It doesn't really matter what part of the spectrum you're on. I'm sure our congressional delegation would be very happy with a DC flight, right?
Absolutely. Anyone that loves their nonstops would be very happy, I'm sure.
What are you excited most about in the coming years in Boise?
It's just been really, really, I sometimes have to pinch myself. I mean, it's been fun to see this community thrive and grow. I look forward to, some of the technology is wild, right? Like the AI, where that's going to take hospitality and tourism, it's all the buzz at conferences. So it'll be interesting to see that. But yeah, I'd like to see things, everyone be successful. But, I definitely want to hear from people if they feel like there's too much. I feel like we've had a slow growth, and we want to continue that with making sure that businesses are thriving and people are still happy that live here. Because, we're our biggest client, really. We're the ones experiencing the area the most.
So, two pieces of kind of news from you all lately. Name change.
Yes.
From Boise Convention and Visitors Bureau, which most people would just say Boise CVB because either one's a mouthful, but one's a little less of a mouthful.
Right.
To Visit Boise. What precipitated that change and why now?
We did a strategic planning process. It's probably been 2 years now, 1.5 to 2 years. Out of that came, we really have morphed into, like a lot of the rest of the U.S. In other cities and destinations. The Convention and Visitors Bureau seems so like we're a government agency, and we're not, right? We're a nonprofit. We're a 501c6.
Like you're the FBI.
Right.
Yeah.
We're the Bureau. It sounded very formal in that regard, but really Visit Boise just encompassing more of everything we do, from the leisure to the cultural to the sports to the meetings and conventions. It wasn't just about meetings and conventions anymore. And it wasn't always about that either. That was always just the name, right? And so we're just kind of catching up with the work that we do.
Yeah, I know a thing or two about names that are broader than what we do. And then I saw news from you late in 2023 about a potato trail.
Yes.
So like a wine trail, but for potatoes. We put this in our Idaho First newsletter, and people were very puzzled, I think would be the word, to be honest. What's the idea here, and how's that working?
That was wild because we have access to make these trails, right? And they're doing them all over the country. But what trails can you use the software for? So what we really wanted the software originally for was to do a kind of show your badge type thing for meetings, conventions, and sports. So when they go to local stores, restaurants, they can say, hey, I'm with Far West Soccer or whatever, and then they get $1 off, whatever it is. So that was the intent of the original of having this software. And then for media, it's much easier to be like, museums passes or whatever, like, here, why don't you go explore the zoo, the museums or whatever. And so those were the two main reasons. But then we have access to make so we did a urban wine trail. And then the team really came up with, I was thinking taco trail because I love tacos. And
Same.
I think there's some really good tacos here. But they came up with the potato trail and worked with the Idaho Potato Commission on some giveaways, like if you go and you check off, and it's things
we should
like
explain what it is a little
there's
bit.
Like a potato donut at Guru Donuts, or there's a beer at Barbarian that's made with potato. So it's not all just going and having French fries or a baked potato somewhere. There's poutine on the list. So you just go, and it's just a way to have fun while you're exploring an area. So you can say, oh yeah, I checked off, I went to these 5 places, and then you might get a Idaho Potato Commission hat or something, like there's different things that they can come and check in and get things. But I will say the biggest surprise or good thing that came of that was the media. The media picked it up across the country. So I know a lot of people here are always like, stop, like, why are you doing a potato?
Why is it always potatoes?
Everyone's associating potato with. But I will say we ended up getting, because they also there was a trail, the potato trail up on, and we also had a room at one of the hotels here.
Tell me about the potato trail up on, what is that? I don't know what that is.
It's potato. Now I'm going to get the name wrong on the spot. There's, it's one of the trails.
It's like an actual trail.
The Ridge to Rivers. Mm-hmm,
wow.
And it's got the name potato in it.
So as part of the potato trail, people can go on an actual potato trail.
You can.
It's not just a virtual thing. There's interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
So it was a little mixture of things, right?
Yeah,
There's a room that's decorated with, I think, nicely at the end of 500 with potato, it's not just a bunch of potato sacks
It's
around.
not like going into Five Guys. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So anyway, the media loved that part, because a lot of times they're like, we don't want to hear about another trail. I'll go to cities with our PR firm, and I do a lot with sometimes with Moya from the Idaho Wine Commission, and we'll sit down and have these appointments, one-on-ones with media, and they're like, don't tell me about another trail. But then they're like, but I do want to hear about this potato trail, so it's been interesting. And we're only rolling them out, we'll roll them out for 4 months at a time, kind of thing.
Fascinating. Well, Carrie Westergard with Visit Boise, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.